should be it, hopefully. That's down the road far enough, so. Well, welcome to everyone here in the room, which I think I pretty much already said that once, right? Except I didn't get to shake everybody's hand, so. And to you out there in internet land. Tonight, we're gonna be talking about the topic out of step 4, which step 4 is we made a decision. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And so that's step 4, and our topic is constructive sorrow out of 2 Corinthians 7, 8 through 11. So, start off with the question here. What does constructive sorrow mean? Tommy, you're ready to go. Real loud, please.
Constructive sorrow is a kind of sadness that leads somewhere good. It doesn't trap you, it moves you. It's the difference between sorrow that paralyzes and sorrow that produces change.
Any thoughts on that, Tommy?
Well, I've had times in my life where I've had sorrow that led nowhere, but deeper into my addiction.
Mm-hmm. So it went somewhere, but not.
Yeah, it just didn't lead towards the change.
Yes.
And it was the wrong kind of sorrow.
That was the destructive.
Destructive, yeah.
Yes.
So I've learned as I got older that
Down in the notes, it has some reference to that says there's 2 different kinds of sorrows. There's constructive and then destructive. And so, actually, that you're referring to at that time was the destructive sorrow.
Yes.
Okay. And I like that. I like that statement that it doesn't trap you, but it does move you. And it moves you.
Your life.
Yes, it moves you. It causes you to be open, which we've been talking about that this whole step 4 in Nehemiah primarily, and how that emotion can set you up to be, like you said, transformed. So, really good. Any other comments from anyone? No? Okay. So constructive sorrow is a kind of sadness, like he said, that leads somewhere good. And it's hard to think of sadness as being good, but we've been talking about it. So are you more able to relate with that statement that it leads to someplace good? Are you able to grasp that sorrow can lead to some good? And if you can, give me an illustration or, a personal story. Anybody?
I can say for mine, taking the time to utilize the dialectical behavioral therapy skills that I had learned, to do the inner childhood healing that I did. You a long time ago told me that you needed to set aside time, crying time. Like that was a big thing, for the type of personality I am, for me to be able to sit down and set aside time to cry so that you're not like grieving in the middle of Walmart, like, maybe men don't do this, but women do, could be crying about the smallest thing. But taking that time while I'm in private and going through the grief of like the childhood that I wished I had versus the childhood that I got, but then coming to realize that it wasn't as bad as after I had grieved the grief and I was able to help to heal my parent wounds, and then coming to have more compassion for my parents, for the ages that they were and their circumstances that they were in, I can understand why things were the way that they were, and so it was through that sorrow, through that constructive sorrow, that I was able to come out the other side with realizing that my childhood wasn't nearly as bad as what I had perceived it to be. So, and I think that constructive sorrow helped the neuroplasticity of my brain grow up
Yes.
a little bit, where I had been stuck in, it's like arrested development, where you're stuck at the age in certain areas of the trauma. So I was still stuck in some areas at 5 years old, or 8 years old, or 12 years old, and it was through that time and a lot of this healing that I did, that those parts of my brain were able to heal and then move on and grow up. And now I can be a better functioning 40-year-old instead of a 40-year-old who's acting like a 5-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's good. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Okay. All right. So anyway, sadness can move us. I was thinking while you were talking there about that, and I remembered that as I was in actually RET, studying that at the time, and realizing that a lot of things that I believed and trusted in, that I found out through the process of going through that and looking at your thoughts and your beliefs, that they weren't true. And that was hard, and that was sad, because they were a lie. And see, that coming to that place, having that emotional experience, helped you to change, because that's not what you wanted to be. And so you're able to make a change in your life, change your thinking, change your emotions, and change your behaviors. That's what it's all about. So anyway, let's go on here. We already made the two types of sorrow, was the constructive sorrow and the destructive sorrow. And I just wanted to kind of go through these real quickly, if you don't mind. The constructive sorrow, which is godly sorrow, and this is the sorrow that God wants to bring in our life, to be able to help us to make the change, not to hurt us or harm us or make us feel bad, but to help us to realize and then better align mentally, emotionally, and spiritually with Him. But this constructive sorrow will lead to repentance. You change your mind and you change your direction. Bam! That's pretty good, right? And that's kind of what I just kind of alluded to. And it produces clarity and truth. That I also kind of talked about that, and you talked about that, Vanessa. That getting clarity, but a lot of us, if not all of us, have lived in a emotional, chaotic tornado, that you're just continually being spun up, and you're then always out of balance emotionally. Does that make sense? And what we want to do is to help you to get some clarity, to be able to start to organize your thoughts, and then be able to have emotional peace and balance, and be able to function without, actually, I'm going to say function not in fear, but in faith and in truth, and that is constructive. Move you towards healing and reconciliation and growth. And I really like this one on this constructive sorrow, is has a sense of hope even if you hurt. Now, I kind of, a while ago when I was talking about this in the very beginning, I kind of alluded to that deal, that you're able to recognize that this constructive sorrow is a good thing, even though it could be uncomfortable, but it's beneficial. And the destructive sorrow leads to shame. You were talking about shame a while ago, and we may be having a lesson on it next month. That it leads to to self condemnation. We are real. A lot of us are really hard on ourselves. We condemn ourselves. We walk in self-condemnation. And of course, the scripture says there is therefore now no condemnation to those that are in Christ Jesus. And you say, well, that's easy to say, Doug. And I said, well, I didn't say it. God said it. So, So, so this destructive sorrow is from the world, and it keeps you stuck in regret and or being victimhood. It produces isolation, despair, and avoidance, right? I was thinking, maybe you alluded to that a while ago, Tommy, when you was talking about the destructive sadness that you were talking about. And focus on, I'm bad. We say that, I'm bad, okay?
No good.
Excuse me?
Worthless. No good.
And but we, and I did something that needs to change. We're very critical, or again, condemning ourselves. So we need to look at this. We've got several things on here, but we need to go forward. And I'm gonna, let's jump down here to the last line of this question information. It says, constructive sorrow is not about punishing yourself. It's about allowing pain to become a teacher instead of a prison. Okay? We can learn from every situation and circumstance if we'll allow ourselves to be open to it. Okay, would you agree with that? Next question is, how does step 4 connect with constructive sorrow? Well, constructive sorrow is the right response to truth. How do you like that statement? I like that statement. Yes, Tommy?
I was thinking, like, as you go through and take your inventory, there can be some sorrow pop up.
Yes, yes.
And you gotta deal with it correctly.
Yes, and that's so very true. Step 4 can be a very destructive if it's done in the wrong manner. And I skipped a line there, and that step 4 exposes the truth. And that's what you're talking about, that inventory exposes the truth, and constructive sorrow is the right response to that truth. Without sorrow, step 4 becomes intellectual. Without step 4, sorrow becomes vague and misdirected. Right? So together, they lead to transformation, which you already spoke of a while ago. What actually happens inside a person? That's an interesting question there, right? Step 4 brings clarity. You begin to see. Okay, what do you begin to see? I've got them down here. I got them highlighted in orange. You start to see patterns. You can see the good patterns and you can see the not so good patterns. You start getting clarity. I don't want to do that anymore. Or yes, I need to follow through. If I give my word, I need to keep it. You see the patterns, you see the wounds, you see the harms done to others, you see the false beliefs. It's really interesting that when you start doing the inventory and being open and being receptive, you can then identify in a better way, in a quicker way, those false beliefs that we bought into. Or actually, let's just be blunt, those lies that we were believing. Okay? The scripture they've got on there, which is one of my favorites, is Proverbs 4:23. Be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. As you think, so are you. As you think, so are you. Yep. That's good, John. So we need to look at how we're thinking. Think about our thinking and how we're thinking. So constructive sorrow engages the heart. How come now comes the critical moment? You don't just see it, you feel it. And sometimes we can hold on to emotions longer than information. At least that's what it, if you are able to have some information and you have an emotion to go along with it, there seems to be help you to hold on to it. Oftentimes when I've talked with people and I may not be able to remember everything that they said, but I could call up the emotion of the conversation. And I remember this one person often would say, well, you said this. I said, that don't sound like me. That doesn't feel like something I would say. Tell me what the context was. And then as they talked about it and around it, then their conversation shifted, and then it started to sound closer to what I would say. Does that make any type of sense? Anyway, it happens pretty regularly. So, all right, I think we'll go ahead and, does anybody have anything they'd like to add in on this part of it?
There's one on here, I really like it. It says, helps you feel the weight of truth without crushing your identity.
Mm-hmm.
I wanna go one step further and
Okay.
saying that it actually helps reveal your true identity,
Mhm.
because when we're active in addiction and we're in that negative mindset or the destructive sorrow part, we don't know our actual identity,
I agree,
you know? Our
because
identity
we're
comes
living in
later.
denial, right?
Exactly, yeah,
Hiding out.
yeah.
Very
So-
good.
It doesn't crush your identity. You know what? It can, and it should crush that false identity.
Yes.
But it's only for the real identity of who you are to come to light.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that.
Thank you. That's
You're
good. All right. Yes, sir.
I like on the back part here where it says the constructive sorrow is the engine for movement. In other words, it can be. When we have constructive sorrow, then when we confess, we're telling the truth, the
Yes.
whole truth.
Yes.
And then we really want to make things right.
Yes.
But without that, we might just confess shallowly, it says, and then the amends just become something we have to do, not really what we want to do.
More of a act of a
Yeah.
duty or something like that.
Yeah,
And one
so-
thing about our emotions, and I basically alluded to it a while ago, our emotions is what gives us the energy or power to take action on what it is that we say we believe. And that's the reason why it's so important to recognize this sorrow is there's no better word than what you said, is the engine, the emotional power source to help you to move yourself that direction. Good, Robert, thank you very much. Yeah, you look like you had something else you wanted to say.
Well, this key distinction that you've got highlighted, this is crucial, it says. Destructive sorrow, after we do this self-examination, this this moral inventory of ourselves. Destructively, we might say, well, I see all this and now I feel worse about myself than I ever did. We can only see the bad in it. But constructive sorrow says, I see this and I see that I need to make some changes, and now I'm ready to do that with God's help. And that's really, really is a key point. You know, I mean, I remember, well, a little funny story, but my wife liked to do, you know, like relationship tests and wanted to write down things about, I said, honey, I don't really like to do those because I usually end up getting into trouble. Anyway,
Don't look at me, I ain't doing either.
now I have a different viewpoint about that. And maybe I would do those tests differently now and view them differently, I don't know. But I'd be more open to those tests now than I was back then.
Well, you remind me of a situation back, I don't know how, long time back. I was taking some of those tests myself, trying to figure me out. And it made a suggestion that you should allow somebody to take that test on you. But of course, they said you need to be ready to listen to what they say and not be defensive. They said something like that. And so I'd given it to 2 or 3 people, and and that worked out. But I'd given it to one of my brothers. I'll just leave it at that. And he said, I don't understand why you always want to grade yourself. And I said, well, it's not grading myself. And you know, that was kind of that mindset that I was wanting to. That was, I think, from the perspective of trying to think that I was better than somebody else. I was just trying to figure it out myself, you know. And actually, I don't think he even did the test. Maybe that says something, but you know, on me. But I had others do it, which were very helpful. And so, which was a big step for me to let somebody evaluate me, you know.
Yeah.
So that's not always the easiest thing to do.
There's one of these work things on step 5 that, what is it? I was looking at it. Ask 3 or 4 trusted friends to write 5 words describing your strengths and 5 words describing your weaknesses. And then,
Vanessa talked about that a few weeks ago.
yeah, I don't think I'd want to do that in front of the whole group here.
Sure, that's fine.
But
We're you know, again, I tell people we only do what you're comfortable with, you know. But
I mean, I would probably do it, but I just think that's kind of I think that should be more in a very, very close trusted group, at least for the first few times you do it. Maybe after you've grown enough, you might want to do it a little more publicly.
Sure, I understand. I get you, and but I knew that's where you were going as soon as you stopped, because that has many people have referred to that question. They hated it at the time, generally speaking, but throughout the years it was a beneficial question or probing, you know, and, cause it takes something just to ask somebody, you know, to, you know, give you an answer, you know, so, anyway. All right, who's gonna read the steps? Come on down, Senor Tommy. Thank you for that, Robert.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Tommy.
The 12 steps. 1. We admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives have become unmanageable. 2. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. We made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. 4. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. 7. We humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. We made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. We made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. We continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And step 4 that we're on tonight. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you, Tommy.
Good evening. How y'all doing tonight?
Good.
I'm waiting on the first question.
Okay.
I got a good reason for this one.
You, where are those questions at? I don't have them on here. No, this is not that one. There they are. What are you hoping God might do, in your life here?
What am I hoping God would do in my life? I am hoping that God would keep me. I'm hoping that God will show me and keep me from destroying myself, my family, and my relationship with people.
All right. So, and why did you choose this lesson?
'Cause
That's
I
the
got,
one you was really waiting on.
yeah, she's not in here now.
So,
Vanessa wanted to do the questions, so I told her I would do the topic, so she gets to do the questions, reflection on this one, because she really wanted to do it.
so I guess you're telling me that, you want me to ask Vanessa that question. Is that what you want me to do?
No, I was gonna tell her I didn't want her to hit me for not doing it.
Oh,
That's what I was gonna tell her, but she walked, well, so, anyway. But the truth be known, constructive sorrow is much needed. Even though could be painful, it's very much needed to push on. Because if you don't have constructive, you got the other one, which is destructive.
well, you know, Vanessa was talking about that sometime I had told her that you need to schedule a crying time,
Yes.
which is, and that sounds rigid to a lot of people, but to people that hold back until they emotionally explode, it helps you to start to be able to go through that. And there are several folks that have said that that has really helped them throughout the year, so.
There's a lot of time that I had to get away by myself for, just to get away from everything so that I could get back focused of where I'm at. And I've done that many a times.
So, do you think that's what, going and visiting the cemeteries and things like that, that's kind of falling in line with what you're talking about? I'm not saying you particular, but I'm talking about in general.
Yes, a lot of it, yeah, it helps you, it helps. It's not, okay, I don't feel a funeral is for the dead, it's for to help the people that are still here to get over the fact.
Sure, absolutely.
And going to the cemeteries, some people, mainly myself, next Friday I'm gonna be sitting at a grave next Friday myself. So you hit a nerve there. Let's move on.
Okay. Let's move
Next
on.
Friday is my birthday. It's also my mom's birthday. So I'm gonna be sitting at her grave tomorrow for next Friday, at least the afternoon. So I'm still not over it. I deal with it, but I'm not over it. That was a hard one. Okay, now we can move on.
Okay.
Constructive sorrow. We made it, Bible reading, 2 Corinthians 7, verse 7, chapter 7, verse 8 through 11. We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We all have to deal with sorrow. We may
Do you
try.
agree or disagree with that statement?
100%.
Why?
It's there, the sorrow's there. Even if we say, oh, no, that ain't gonna bother me, then eventually you start thinking about it. And then eventually it's there. You have to deal with one or the other.
Well, what happens if you don't deal with it or process it? What happens?
You're gonna blow up and you're gonna cause more sorrow, the destructive sorrow.
Okay.
I've been there. I've done that.
Okay.
And I would apologize to you, and I haven't studied this week as much as I normally do because I had prior stuff this week. But I can do this. We may try to stuff down. We may try to stuff our sorrow down and ignore it. We may try to drown it by giving in to our addictions or avoid feeling it by intellectualizing.
What does that mean?
It means that we're programmed to avoid pain, seek pleasure. So we're gonna look for any way. The pain comes up in us when we're looking at it, we're gonna try, okay, hey, I can go this way and it's over here, I don't need it. No matter what we do, we're gonna try to avoid it. And that leads us to our addictions, because our addictions is what we cause to avoid what we're trying to feel.
Okay. Anybody else?
What was the question?
The question is it says we try to stuff it down and ignore it. We may try to drown it by giving in to our addictions and avoid feeling it by intellectualizing. And the question is, what does that mean?
It's sabotage. You're sabotaging yourself. You're getting so far with trying to get better that you just fall apart at the point.
I don't disagree with the term that you're sabotage, but do you believe that do we that do that believe that we're actually sabotaging ourselves?
No, it's a choice.
It's a choice, but we think that
We're already corrected.
It's how we're trying to cope with the situation by avoiding it or numbing it or stuffing it. We think that's in our best interest because sorrow is painful, right? And Robert was going to say something.
I was like, we just overthink. Because we don't wanna go through the pain involved with the sorrow, we look for anything else to avoid it. So our mind is moving, I don't really wanna do that, but what can I do to make me feel better about not doing that?
Right. Right. So,
Trying to justify not taking the action that we need to.
and that's where a lot of our addictive behaviors or obsessive compulsive behaviors come from. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Or you?
I agree with what you say.
Okay, go ahead, Willie.
But sorrow doesn't go away. We need to accept the sorrow that will be part of our inventory process. Not all sorrow is bad for us.
Well, help me understand what that means.
Not all sorrow is bad for us,
Well, that
or
we need to accept the
we
sorrow.
need to accept it. Well, you learn from your pain, so you got to accept the pain's gonna be there to push forward, or you're just stuck right here and you ain't gonna be able to, you ain't gonna get no better if you're still holding on to that pain.
So if we don't process the pain and deal with it, then what happens in our life?
We live that pain.
We're stuck in
we're
it,
stuck there
or
and
you get to revisit that same problem or another one just like it.
Right.
Isn't that true?
yes.
Or worse.
Or worse.
Around that pain mountain.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the children of Israel. They wandered through the desert there until they were ready to go ahead and deal with the challenge of going on into the promised land. And it only took them 40 years. The trip was only, I think, 11 days, but it took them 40 years to get there. Okay, I just waded off in it too far, didn't I? All right, go ahead, Willie.
Not all sorrow is bad for us. The Apostle Paul had written a letter to the church in Corinth,
To the church in Corinth.
That made them very sad because Paul confronted them about something they were doing wrong. At first, he was sorry that he had hurt them, but later he said,
So what he did, he wrote a letter to them, telling them about they were a very young church, and he was trying to communicate to them, and he had written a very strong letter to them. So that's what he's talking about. At first, he was sorry for trying to hurt them. Then he wasn't sorry because he really wanted to try to help them. Go ahead.
2 Corinthians 7, 9 through 11. Now I am glad I sent it, not because it hurt you, but because the pain caused you to repent and change your ways. It was that kind of sorrow God wants His people to have. For the kind of sorrow God wants us to experience leads us away from sin and results in salvation. There's no regret for the kind of sorrow. Just see what the godly sorrow produced in you. You show that you have done everything necessary to make things right.
So what do you think that means?
I think that he was glad that he heard them, because it got them to see, hey, this is our pain, this is what we've done. So we can stop and do what's right, and therefore save them.
So they feel the pain because they recognize that they had done wrong, which is a good thing, right? That's what we talked about, and so that they would make a change in their life, and they would repent, which means go the other direction, and so that's what was going on there with Paul writing the letter to them. Okay, any comments? You want to say something, Robert?
I think he's referring to 1 Corinthians, right?
I believe so, yes.
So that letter, I mean, I just kind of did a little bit of checking right now, but Corinth was a very rich town.
Yes.
The people lived well, they partied, they ate good, rich food, and they didn't really have much.
It was on the trade market,
Yeah.
the caravans, and also they had a seaport there, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
So the Christians, especially the new Christians, had just come out of that life, and many of them were having a hard time leaving that old life behind. And I think Paul was saying that they need to be careful not to let those bad behaviors infiltrate the church, even take some serious stands against those who are trying to bring it in, you know. So they could have been really sad about that in a destructive way by saying, who does he think he is, telling us how to run our church, you know, or something like that.
Sure.
But he was thankful that they took it the right way and saw the errors that maybe they had made or they could make, and made changes in the way they were handling those things.
Because when, and that's what step 4 is kind of challenging us and asking us to do, is take this fearless and moral inventory of ourselves.
Yeah.
That we examine ourselves, and that's, that is difficult, particularly in the early stages. And but after you've done that process, kind of like he was talking about a while ago, maybe after a while, we grasp the wisdom of the process, and we're more open because we see the benefits, and so but at the same time, we don't want you to get overwhelmed by an inventory. You take one step at a time, and by the way, you take your own inventory. You don't take anybody else's inventory.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Willie.
Lamentation. I'm not saying that right.
Close enough.
3:32-33. Jeremiah said, through God brings grief. He also shows compassion because of the greatness of his unfailing love. For he does not enjoy hurting people or causing them sorrow.
So, any thoughts?
God has been the same since day one. His love's been there. We're the ones that have to change to get it. I mean, all we have to do is ask for it, and He gives it. And it's abundant.
good.
It's not a one and done deal with Him
Good.
on that.
Yes, sir.
I think when we're first trying to do this, make that list. At least I did. I'm not saying everyone does this. But I said, well, if I wanna take out all of that stuff that's on this side, my life is not gonna be any fun whatsoever.
Yes.
But that's a false idea. And it took me quite a long time to realize that if I got rid of those things that I could see were not good for me, my life would not be less, it would be more enjoyable and more fulfilling. And thankfully, God didn't give up on me. He allowed me the time to come to that realization, I guess. Because someone may have told me that wouldn't have been enough. I had to come to that idea in my own mind and in my own heart for it really to take hold and do something. Help me to take the steps needed to get rid of those things in my life.
Because the reason why those obsessions, compulsions, those addictions, those behaviors, the reason why they're there is because they did meet some sort of need at one time. But the rest of the story is,
Yeah.
how much is it going to take from you? Where's it going to leave you? Where are you going to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years, or maybe even more? Because it wants more and costs more and takes more and normally separates you from those those significant relationships, usually. And isn't that true? And so when we finally come to the place, usually it's at the bottom, the crash, because it's taken everything that you got, and there's not much more to take, except your freedom or your life, tragically. And so then you say, wait a minute, maybe there's another way. Oh, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a familiar story to everybody? Okay, go ahead, Willie.
The Corinthians' grief was good. It came from honest self-evaluation, not morbid
Condemnation.
condemnation.
What does that mean?
Come from the heart, not from, oh, hey, I'm bad, I'm not worth it.
You see, you honestly examine yourself, but not condemning yourself, because our entire life we come in, we don't know anything, and we have to learn, and learning is a process. Isn't that true? And usually it's by making mistakes and having to adjust. And that's our entire life. And if we just look at it from a spiritual perspective, the idea is to come in a better alignment with God, because we chose to be separated from God. And that's by, we chose our substances and behaviors instead of God, for the reason we thought it was in our best interest. Well, maybe there was a little bit of pleasure there, or maybe there was a lot of pleasure there, but it doesn't stay there. And it costs you and takes from you. Is that not the truth?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Willie.
We can learn to accept our sorrow as a positive part of recovery, not as a punishment.
I think you ought to read that sentence again, please.
We can learn to accept our sorrow as a positive part of recovery, not a punishment.
Can we learn that sorrow is a positive part of our recovery? Can we embrace sorrow? Can we do that?
I think that's required in recovery, isn't it? It would be required in recovery, isn't it? That we do that.
Well, actually, yes, to be able to grow, and that's
For complete recovery.
yeah, that's being honest with yourself and someone else, and until we're in those places, we're not going to be able to have any serenity.
Takes time.
Does like what that's exactly what Robert was saying.
You're not gonna get up here and do it all the first day, even the first year.
Or the second, third, and fourth year.
Yeah, cause you didn't do all the damage in one day, so.
So, what did you learn from this lesson, Willie?
To embrace sorrow.
And what's your takeaway, Willie?
Keep on striving to be better today than be better tomorrow than what I was today.
All right. Thank you, Willie. Here's Vanessa. Thanks, Willie.
Oops. I gotta remember to pick that up in a minute. Okay, do you have any questions before I start?
Why did you pick this topic?
I knew that was coming.
Because Willie said you picked the topic.
I did, I picked both of them at the same time, and then we just back-to-backed them. So, same reason why I picked the other one last week was I've gone through so much of it in the last year and a half, of actually taking time to address a lot of the inner sadness that I had, that I wasn't aware that I had that much. And so,
Can
since
I
I've
ask you a
gone,
question about that?
yeah,
How can it be that we can have so much of that packed into ourselves and not know it? Got any thoughts?
yes, I was actually thinking about it earlier, whenever we were talking about something else, but, for myself, and I think that this could be true for a lot of my generation and older, it was a lot of conditioning. And so I kind of shared last week where if I was sad or really emotional, I would get a whooping and I would get told, you better suck it up or I'll give you something really to cry about. And so there was a lot of conditioning where sadness, tears, they were just alligator tears, your emotions don't matter. And so the sadness just became something that just wasn't allowed. But there was a lot of anger in my family that was fully expressed. And so for myself, my sadness started to be expressed in anger. And I understand that that's how a lot of my family dealt with sadness as well. And still not so much, not as much anymore, because most of my family I had a big family, it's not so big anymore, but, and I think everybody's growing too in my family, so, but
Congratulations.
thank you. And I'm proud to be able to watch them also grow. But I know that that was the truth for myself. I can't say for everybody else.
Well, there's, I don't hear it so much anymore, but maybe because that we are conditioned to stuff emotions and feelings and choose to just disassociate from feelings other than anger.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing too, so I'll share a quick story. We've talked before about how like in childhood we are inherently self-centered. Not in a bad way, in the way we think we're self-centered, it's just because we're in our own little world most of the time, and
It's a survival mechanism.
yeah, and when we're kids, we don't know any better.
Right.
And so the very first traumatic experience I ever had was my parents and my great grandmother were in a car wreck. I was 5 years old. I knew something was serious because both of my grandma on my mom's side came and picked up my grandma on my dad's side, and whenever they're getting together, it's something serious because they didn't like each other much back then. And I remember overhearing their conversation and not fully understanding what had happened, and then ending up at the hospital, and then hearing from one of the doctors that one of them had passed away from the car wreck. And at that point, I had only saw my dad and I hadn't seen my mom. So I, at 5 years old, thought it was my mom. But she was in the ICU, and it was actually my great grandmother. And I remember trying to get some clarity from the adults and being dismissed. Well, okay, as a 5-year-old, how that impacted me was I don't matter, and I'm not worth you telling me what's going on. But in therapy as an adult, to restructure that, these are two women, one just lost their mother, and both of them, one of their children is in critical condition in ICU, which was my mother, and the other one, my dad had broke his face, and so he was in pretty bad shape. I was a pretty bad wreck. So to restructure that was two women dealing with their grief and loss. Yeah, they were in their own survival, flight or fight mode, and to have a 5-year-old there with, the way that it was, kids are kind of to be seen and not heard. They're not that super intelligent. Like, this was back in actually it was in 1991, so we didn't know as much about children development or whatever it was. But either way it went, like, they were still dealing with their own stuff, so they had bigger things to deal with. So I forgot the question that led me down all of this.
Well, the question I ask, why, basically, how can we have all that in us and not know it?
Right. And so just starting at that point was, started the stuffing, me having to learn how to self-regulate. And that, I believe, is with the conditioning, our survival, learning how to self-regulate. Because we actually start to learn how to self-regulate, I think it is about 5-6 months old, whenever we have to like self-soothe, babies have to self-soothe whenever they wake up startled in the middle of the night or whatever. So I think it's just part of life, and some people have it differently than others. I don't want to say better or worse, but life is different with everybody. So yeah, I think that's how we get there. And then we become adults and we have to learn how to regulate ourselves. So, okay.
Physically, emotionally.
And all of the above.
Yes.
Yeah. So in what ways have I avoided facing my sorrow about my addiction in In what ways have I avoided facing my sorrows about my addiction has impacted my life and the lives of others? So at the root of my addiction was codependency. And so that's what I want to talk about, because avoiding facing my codependency for a long time, I didn't want to believe that I was codependent. It was the other person, right? And it impacted, like, I was a massive enabler in a lot of ways. And I was kind of talking about this earlier with my sister and my cousin, how we kind of grew up watching the women in our family wait on the men in our family hand and foot, like laying their clothes out, running their bath, like doing stuff like that, and not getting much reciprocity, like where it was returned. And so I kind of just grew up in that codependent enabling, you know, mentality. And so the way that me avoiding my codependency very much was my addiction, you know, that I would drink through it, or I would smoke weed or whatever. Like, that's how I would get to it. That's why I say it's the root of my addiction. And so it impacted my life, and where I was always self-abandoning. I self-abandoned at almost every turn that I had, where I would say yes even whenever when I wanted to say no. And so in abandoning myself, I had someone say it to me one time: when you abandon yourself, you're abandoning the person I fell in love with. And so I completely would change in relationships, because I would be one way in the dating process, and then once we lived together and I go into wife mode, you know, I was a whole different human being. So, and then just spiral down, how you get into domestic violence, you get into you know, your spouse's addiction and stuff, and how that would affect my mom or my sister when they would get worried about me, and how my life was, or even my dad, you know, having to refrain from going to prison for harming the person I was with. Like, it was just like this humongous just ping pong with how it would affect my life, because instead of while I was avoiding my codependency by drinking and smoking weed or whatever, there was so much. And even now, like, my children are living the effects of a lot of how we lived too. So hopefully that answers the questions. So do you have anything to add before I go to the next one?
Nope.
Okay. Am I willing to set aside time to grieve and allow humility to grow in me? Yes. And I have off and on over the last 14 years, or well, probably more 12 years, whenever you first said to me, you know, you need to schedule crying time. I've allowed myself to do that. And what I would do is I would actually, like, listen to a song that would trigger, you know, a memory or emotion, and then I would write about it. And so that helped me. Sometimes it did not stop me from crying at the grocery store, you know, but a lot of times, like, I realized when I was 21, I had a bit of a breakdown. It was after I had Lana, my youngest one, and like right after I had her, and I had a breakdown because I had realized that I had gone most of my mid-teens, teenage years, early 20s without really grieving. My one grandfather, he passed away in 2003 on my dad's side. I grieved him, but not to like the full. I still hid my emotions. I grieved not around the family. But then my other grandpa died in 2005, and I didn't grieve during that. But it was also like slow process, like we knew it was coming and it had been like a 2-week period and stuff. But still in that, like, I still sometimes ask myself like why I didn't grieve, or why I still grieve. I still struggle to grieve in the moment when people that I love like pass away, or like I'll feel the tears come on, and I still have a habit of stuffing it down, but I'll go and like think about them or something just so that I can let it out, because I do know how bad it is to stuff down the grief. There's some Eastern medicine thing that I had studied where it says you hold grief in your lungs. So like if you're having problems taking full breaths, or a lot of times I'll realize I'm holding my breath, and I breathe very shallow, and then that's whenever I know, okay, I need to do some somatic work, do some yoga or something to help pull that out and identify it. But for a long time, it was part of that being conditioned, you know, into, I would watch even the other women in my family not grieve. Like, you grieve in the bathroom. Moms don't show weakness in front of their kids. We are the strong ones. And we, you know, women are I hear women are so strong because you can go through childbirth and go through all this and yada yada, but yet we're the weakest ones with our emotions. But I never saw that. Weak emotions with the women in my family, I never saw that. Maybe in anger, you know, on my dad's side, but not on my mom's side. On my mom's side, it was maybe more passive aggression than anything. But yeah, like, so to become an adult trying to learn how to deal with my emotions, which I was very thankful, you know, the last year and a half of my grandma's, on my mom's side, the last year and a half of her life, she became very vulnerable and was very open with discussing a lot of things. And so we actually bonded a lot over that. And I got to see a lot of very vulnerable side of her. And that was around the same time that my mom started to really like come into her own as like the nurturing, like vulnerable, motherly, like soft, and that softness is what I used to think was weakness, but that softness, to where, oh, I actually get to see this mushiness that my mother is affected by these things, you know, where me growing up, my mom had to be really tough on me because, well, I was undiagnosed ADHD, but that's a whole different story. Like, she is a whole different woman now, and I got to see a whole different woman in my grandma. So that helped me to be able to come into, or start to come into, who I am now, that I have set the time aside, because that restructuring of like that car wreck and stuff like that, and going through like all of the traumatic events in my childhood, because like there's one story. There was one event that I crawled up on my mom's lap and she pushed me off her lap into the floor, right? And I can say that and you guys would be like, that's horrible, why would she, you know? And for a long time, that's all I remembered about that, right? And then through therapy and through the cognitive reprocessing that we were doing in this childhood healing, we came to the conclusion is because my mom had just been in a car wreck and I'm crawling on her at 5 years old. I was not a light-weighted child at 5 years old. And my mom was in ICU for a couple of months, you know, and it was a pretty bad wreck. And so you put that context with that, it's not as bad, you know. And so that's where like a lot of the compassion for my parents and healing those parent wounds came in. But had I not spent the time to go back through those sad moments, those most triggering moments of my childhood, would I have ever uncovered that? No, probably not. I probably wouldn't be as grateful and appreciative of my mother as I am now. So that's why I say let it crush the old identity so that your true identity can come out, because now I can be softer and more vulnerable with my mother without feeling like she's going to abandon me or push me off her lap again, because that wasn't even the truth. It was my truth for a long time, but that wasn't the truth, so.
Well, it was your truth as a 5-year-old,
Mm-hmm,
and because that's what you saw it,
mm-hmm,
how you saw it. But what you did was you went back and looked at it with an adult perspective,
mm-hmm,
and because you're able to see a bigger picture,
mm-hmm.
and that changed. That you came up with new information, which gave you new thoughts, and then you had different emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it changed your story.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the same story,
Mm-hmm.
but you were able to shift it to where you could do that. And I know you basically said the same thing, but I thought maybe it'd be helpful if I restated it in those words.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, yeah. That's why I think that's another bigger reason why, like, I wanted to choose these topics, is because how important and how much that it has shifted me in the last year and a half alone. So,
Congratulations.
thank you. What is my commitment to myself, my growth, and my recovery? I think at this point, it's just in moments where, like, I still have like the automatic wanting to stuff, because that's still a knee-jerk reaction, but I'm able to identify it much faster now. Like, there's been in the last couple of years, like, multiple people who I know. I won't say that they're my best friends, but they're like my dad's closest friends, and so I grew up with them, so they were almost as close as uncles. They've passed away. A couple of people here that I've known from SNL passed away, and like I felt some grief for a very brief period of time, but then I caught myself stuffing it again, and so now I just catch it, and so I'll ask myself, like, why are you not wanting to grieve?
Good question.
And I don't know if I've come up with like a super great answer, because it's just been like, well, I just don't feel like I need to right now. And that's where I'm at with my emotions. As far as grief and the sadness goes, like, there's also this thing called object permanence that I struggle with the ADHD. So if it's like out of sight, out of mind, that's what object permanence is. And it very much connects with humans, with people. If I'm not around you for a long time or whatever, I don't feel as connected. And so I don't feel as disconnected whenever, one of them passes away. So there is that too. So I do recognize that. But then hopefully I'm not over what did you say? Or over and intellectualizing my emotions, which I might be, but I haven't faced that part just yet.
It's a process.
It is a process.
It's like we're a pendulum, and we swing back and forth till we finally come to a place of a healthy balance.
Yeah. So, because so what really started a lot of like the inner childhood healing stuff, I just want to share this real quick, is I was studying about how Jews grieve. Like, they have several holidays where they spend the time grieving. And so they set aside time, at least Purim and around Yom Kippur, that they will set aside time to grieve, to think about this bad stuff that they've come through. But even like there's several places in the Bible where they put ashes on their head and they rip their clothes off. Like, they have a wailing wall, in their city where they will just go and like wail and cry and stuff like that. And I was just like, what a stark difference between their culture and American culture, So I think a lot of it too is a lot of American culture, with how arrogant. But anyway, so that's what started me, like, if they can do it, and if I want to be closer to the way that I feel that Jesus was, then I've got to be able to face this kind of grief, you know, because my grief to me was very big stuff, and it was a lot too. So, okay, am I bent on self-condemnation? I used to be. I'm not now.
You know, condemnation is condemning oneself.
Mhm.
That's what that means. Okay?
I was definitely my worst enemy. Beating myself up.
It's way, it's, a lot of people are, and they don't even know it sometimes, most of the time.
My biggest self-condemnation came with like my mothering, with like how I did as a mom, you know, but I did the best I could with what I was working with. So, and that's what I got now. So, no more self-condemnation. My kids still love me for the most part. You know, let them pick a day, and sometimes they don't like me, but that's okay. I still love them. So, am I now willing to let God's mercy go with me as I examine my faults and their impact on others? Yes. Learning how to embrace God's mercy, I feel like I've been doing that more just since like September, whenever I ended up in the hospital, and getting to finally feel like my parents' love for me whenever like I was at my most vulnerable moment. It's only been just since September that I'm really learning to try to start to live in God's grace and mercy. God's grace as favor, not just the space to get it right, but his favor. And with that comes mercy. And I really see mercy and grace as like this transactional exchange where he is providing mercy and I'm receiving grace. So it's like this back and forth thing, and they go hand in hand. And so, and in that, I am learning at this point to have more mercy on myself. Because like the other day, I just started having this existential crisis thought about I'm 40 years old and I don't necessarily like I like my job, but I don't like my job, and I'm in college and I was undeclared. I just declared my major, which I'm not even sure if I'm satisfied with it. And I'm, you know, going through this thought of like, I'm 40 and I have nothing to show for it. I'm not married. I don't own anything except for my car, you know, and so just to have those thoughts, it's like, okay, you still need to have mercy for yourself, because I've been through a lot. And so I would look back and, you know, when I'm beating myself up at the age of 40, I'm like, you got to think about it. I got pregnant at 17. That 18-year-old who had moved out of her parents' house straight into marriage, she had to be one tough cookie, and she went through a lot, you know. So it's finding mercy for my past self so that I can glean from it for mercy for myself now. Because I'm a whole lot better now than what I used to be, but I know that there's better still and more to come, and I'm not exactly where I want to be. And I guess that's part of life. So, you keep saying it, so.
You know, my statement that I say is, that's what I did, but that's not who I am.
Yeah.
You know, and of course that's part of knowing who you are, you know, even though just because that's who I am doesn't mean that I'm all the way there yet, right? So, and that's, and having, and you had a word, you're talking around a word that I wondered if I could throw this word into your
Sure.
mix here, and that's love.
Mm-hmm.
Love, having the ability to love yourself and love others, which with that mercy and grace that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's been learning to love myself. I have struggled a lot with what is a healthy, allowable amount of self-love. you know, where it's not skirting on the toes of narcissism, you know, or cause that worries me, you know, or what's a healthy amount without skirting on thinking higher of myself than what I ought, you know. But it's really whenever I was talking earlier about allowing the old identity to be crushed so that your new identity can come to fruition. Like there's a lot of things that I'm healing from, that my identity is healing from, where I'm trying to be more comfortable with wearing my hair down, or trying to be more comfortable with being more feminine, or trying to be more comfortable with wearing makeup again, where I had lost a lot of that in those relationships. So that self-love is, you know, choosing myself, like, no, I'm not going to allow these negative things that happen to me to continue to control my life anymore. And not even talking about the childhood stuff. This is talking about the stuff that happened as an adult, you know. And so the more that I allow it, and I'm learning to dwell in God's mercy and love and grace, and learning to accept love from my parents or my sister, because I realize that I have kept that at arm's length for a long time also. But the more that I am learning to actually love myself, and not in a selfish way. But some of it, with being codependent, some of it does feel really selfish, having to learn to love myself.
It may feel that way
Mhm.
to us, but is that the truth?
No,
What would God say about that?
let your yes be yes and your no be no. Like, and that's a big thing. Like even Jesus had boundaries. You know, if you think about, you know, like whenever he fed the 5,000 and they followed him and they just wanted his food, he ducked out. He didn't sit there and preach and feed him again. He left. You know, and I see it a lot through scriptures. I can't pick them all off the top of my head, but let your yes be yes and your no be no. Like that's big. That's big. Don't abandon yourself, you know? And that's what I would do. Like, so even now, like I'll check in with myself, like, why am I saying no to this? Am I saying no because I'm want to be hard pressed on this boundary, or because I really don't want to do it? And if I don't want to do it, why don't I want to do it? You know, depending on who it is, what it is, and stuff like that. So I have a lot of overanalyzing that goes on still. Um, Not nearly as much as it did, but I feel like for me, being a codependent, I have to kind of be that way so that I'm not just like completely cold and closed off, you know, but then I'm also not being a doormat. I'm trying to find more gray instead of black and white. I mean, yes, letting your yes be yes and your no be no is black and white, but for me, for so long, I didn't have a rhyme or reason other than this is my duty to be this way, you know, and I didn't like being that way. And so I have to for me, I feel like I have to kind of dig a little bit in those moments to where I'm not just, you know, a bleeding heart all over the place, or, you know, too cold and rigid that nobody's allowed in. So for now, I have to be a little over analytical about some things.
Sure.
So we'll see how that works for my brain.
Well, we're supposed to use that part of ourselves, but we also balance it with our heart, which is our spirit, and help us find be able to navigate. You know, because again, that scripture I read out of Proverbs, you know, we need to be careful what we think, because those thoughts shape our lives.
Mhm.
So.
And that's what I really have been trying to work on in this last couple of months is, you know, our thoughts and our words, we manifest our own reality. And so I've really been working hard at like the catch it, check it, change it, catching those thoughts. And whenever intrusive thoughts come, not attaching emotion to them to try to help the neuroplasticity. And at least now the voices that I hear like are my own internal monologue, or dialogue. that I'm having with myself, so.
Well, you know, and trying to line things up with the truth. What is the truth? And what, you know, what am I feeling? And, or what's the cluster of feelings that I'm having, you know, so.
And I've tried really hard to like stay out of the assuming. So like if I'm having issues or whatever, I'll probe more. Like if my sister wants me to do something, I'll probe her more like, why do you want me to do this, before I jump to an assumption or a conclusion on what I'm gonna do. And I try to do that with anybody who asks me to do anything.
Yep, seek first to understand.
Mhm.
So, what'd you learn from this lesson tonight?
I feel like I learned a lot and I shared a lot. So, but that it is really healthy to have constructive sorrow, that emotions aren't bad. There is this destructive part, but that I can allow myself to have those emotions and, you know, learn to balance and adjust them, and that's where I'm at, and that's where I've been for, you know, several months now. So again, I'm right where I need to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your takeaway?
To keep allowing and not just to fall back into old patterns and behaviors of the stuffing, which I'm way more self-aware of now, because it is so automatic that sometimes I'm not as 100% aware, but it comes to my awareness a lot faster. Yeah.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa.
You're welcome.
Don't forget your drink.
I will.
All right. Any comments from anyone? I hear some thunder.
Yep.
But I don't hear any rain yet. Do you hear any rain? Okay. Thank you. That way I can, overcoming denial.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be Robert next week. Okay, all right. And then Lori's gonna be doing the steps. Did you volunteer for that, or?
Voluntold.
She's care of me.
So, all right. Any comments from anybody? Something that you learned out of the lesson tonight?
Careful how I handle my emotions.
Good. Good.
Check yourself before you think.
Say it again.
Check yourself before you think.
And especially before you respond.
Yeah.
Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may His face shine upon you and give you His peace. Thanks for being here.